No, I didn't find it.
Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in my co-host from the FF Face-Off, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing good, Mike. What about you?
I'm doing great. Anytime the Dallas Cowboys lose, I'm feeling pretty good. What?
They're a mess. That whole organization's a mess.
It's great. It's fun to watch, especially when Cowboy fans get so excited after they win a game.
It's kind of funny that they got stuck in Philly for another 3 hours because their charter plane, there was malfunctioning. So they were stuck there, and I'm happy. I'm glad for it.
Well, right now, if anybody wants to call in today, our call-in number is 812-496-0852. If you called in a little earlier, we're sorry we started a little late, but you can call back. Also, if you don't want to go on air and ask questions or comments, you can direct message us at Grilling Truth on Twitter. Let's go ahead and let's get started with Saturday's games, where the Houston Texans beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20 in a game that was, I think it was John Facenda in Super Bowl 12. He called it, which was the game with all the turnovers with the Cowboys and the Broncos. Fiercely played, but frightfully flawed. And frightfully flawed was this game as the Texans ended up squeaking by 23-20. And, Jameis Winston was Jameis Winston. Sometimes he looked like the best quarterback in the NFL. Other times he looked like he should be playing high school football still. Ronald Jones helped out, 14 carries, 77 yards. But the Texans, in the end, Anthony, get the win because it seems to be how they roll.
That game from the get-go, Jameis Winston, I think he's thrown an opening drive interception in like 5 out of his past 6 games. It got ugly early. And Tampa Bay somehow stuck in there, and they were right in the game at the end. They got a running game going. And keep in mind, they were down 2 of the best, not even 2 of their best receivers, but 2 of the best receivers in the NFL with Godwin and Evans. And they still managed to keep it close, which worries me if you're a Houston Texans fan. Well, that is a game with all those turnovers, they should have put it away.
Well, the thing that worries me if you're a Texan fan is Carlos Hyde, 17 carries for 27 yards. You're not going to win in the playoffs if you can't run the ball. And they couldn't run the ball.
But they've had issues running the ball all season long. This isn't new.
I know, which is why it's still not new that I don't think they're long for the playoffs once they get there. And I think this is a team that, much like Seattle, they're getting there because of their quarterback. And the quarterback can only take you so far, though. And if Will Fuller's not playing, they're not a threat at all, I don't think.
No, and I think Will Fuller might be done for the rest of the year now, right?
It sounds like it. If not, it doesn't sound like he's going to be back for that first playoff game. So,
no, yeah, he's at least done for week 17.
My other question is this. Is it just me, or do all, outside of maybe 5 coaches in the NFL, suck? When you watch the game management, the clock manage it, for almost any NFL game, you see constant mistakes. How can Bruce Arians not challenge the first down play? When they had the 3rd and 1, and it looked like if it's not a first down, he's probably only...
At what point of the game was it?
Right before the 2-minute mark.
Did he have... Because I know he used a challenge very early on a pass interference.
Yeah, but you get 2 of them.
Hell, he could have used them both by that time.
Yeah, but he didn't. But the other thing is this, why you use them so soon? But when I look at this, I just don't think the coaching we see is very good. And the announcers are horrible because with 2:04 left, you have a buck go down, and they stop the clock. And the announcer on TV says, well, Bruce Arians decided to use his timeout before the 2-minute mark, which would be stupid. And no, he didn't. But then once they realize it's because a player is hurt and has to come off the field, then the announcers act like Arians changed his mind when Arians never called timeout to begin with.
Well, see, on the announcers, not to give them a little bit of a break, but they were NFL Network announcers. They're not normal, play-by-play guys. The three-game Saturday slate, I believe, was all handled by NFL Network personalities, which is fine, but it's Rich Eisen calling a game.
Well,
and he's tenured in the business. These guys aren't doing it every week like we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and we will now move on to the Buffalo Bills, who had their chance against the New England Patriots. They came up short 24-17 in a game they needed to win to have a chance to win the AFC East, even though that chance with a win was probably still small. But I think what we saw here, the Bills had the lead 17-13 going to the fourth quarter. Josh Allen played well enough, 13 for 26, 208, 2 touchdowns. But in the end, the New England Patriots, as they are inclined to do, figured out a way to score 11 points in the fourth quarter, come back and win the game 24-17. Tom Brady was efficient. Sony Michel ran the ball well. Rex Burkhead ran the ball well. I think the Patriots are a team that, I hate to say this right now, but I think they're improving a little bit. I think what they did against the Bills was impressive, especially in that fourth quarter.
Well, that was the best game that New England has played probably since, I don't know, September or October. And it was a Bills team that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, I think they might have lost 3 times in the past 20 years. So they obviously had the Bills number, but yeah, they got the running game going a little bit. There were guys involved other than just Julian Edelman and James White catching passes. Brady had a big game. And all that being said, the Patriots defense didn't play all that well. So their offense did have to do a little bit more. And the Bills were still in it at the end anyway. And I don't think this takes anything away from Buffalo.
I don't think it takes anything away from Buffalo either, but I mean, when you say the Patriots defense didn't play that well, whenever you're holding a visiting team to, under 100 yards rushing, you're usually going to win that game if you're the Patriots.
I mean, they didn't play their normal shutdown. I mean, this defense looked, like it could have been one of the best in the history of the league earlier in the year. This was a defense that was, they were scoring to help out their offense. They were blocking punts. So they didn't have much of that yesterday.
Yeah, but what they did have is they held Josh Allen to 200 yards passing, and they held him to 100 yards rushing. So if you're only giving up 300 yards in an NFL game, it's not a bad day.
No, and again, I'm not knocking the defense.
And I'll tell you this, I'm
trying to give a little bit more credit to the offense.
I used to not be sold on Josh Allen, but I think Josh Allen's going to turn out to be a pretty good quarterback.
Listen, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson right now are set to be the 2 best from that draft class, but we'll talk about the Jets in a little bit. Somehow, Adam Gase and Sam Darnold, they have 6 wins. And I know against my Dallas Cowboys, but against the Steelers, they've had some impressive wins despite the fact that they have injuries all over the field.
Yeah, and I think that...
And a running back that doesn't want to be there.
The difference between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson right now is simply the fact that Lamar Jackson has guys he can throw the ball to.
Would you take Lamar Jackson? Would you take Lamar Jackson's pass catchers or Josh Allen's?
I would take Lamar Jackson's.
See, I think it's closer than you think, because Lamar Jackson, he has Mark Andrews, an elite tight end who's emerging, and the rookie Marquise Brown. They're his 2 top pass catchers. And Josh Allen has John Brown and Cole Beasley.
Yeah, and I don't think that John Brown and Cole Beasley are anywhere near the other 2. Cole Beasley's not a guy that can blow the top off a defense. And my point here is to run the offense the way they run it. You don't see Josh Allen get to make the big plays that Lamar Jackson does because the Baltimore Ravens are built more with speed. And the reason you build that with speed is when you got a quarterback that likes to run, which both of them do, when you got guys that can blow the top off the defense and run down the field, it takes people away that could possibly tackle Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. So I don't think it's necessarily which one has the better receivers. I just think in the offenses that they're in, Lamar Jackson's offense is more conducive to what he can do. And I think Josh Allen is one big play wide receiver away from putting up similar numbers to Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I still like John Brown. He is a semblance of a big play receiver. I just don't think he's a number one big play wide receiver. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
He's not a true number one. And I'm agreeing with you.
John Brown is basically a number 3 guy. Maybe a number 2 if your team's not that great. But a team with good wide receivers.
That's a fair assessment of that.
I mean, because if you're on a team that has good wide receivers, I mean, where does he fit in Kansas City? He's the number 4 guy.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're rolling with a guy as your number 1 that's a number 4 on a couple other teams, you need a number 1. All right, next up, the San Francisco 49ers slipped by the Los Angeles Rams 34-31. Jimmy Garoppolo did not play well. The 49ers didn't run the ball well. And the Rams, Jared Goff was all right. They didn't run the ball well. The thing that sticks out to me, though, here, if I'm a 49ers fan, Garoppolo didn't play well. They didn't run the ball well, and they won the game.
No, it was an outstanding team win for the San Francisco 49ers. I think it was a win that they needed after that heartbreaker against the Falcons. It was actually, Deebo Samuel. I believe he ran for a touchdown. So it was a good win for San Francisco. They can win many different ways. Even the Kyle Juszczyk, a very good fullback who can catch passes, he had himself a nice little game too. They have a lot of players that fit into what Kyle Shanahan wants to do.
All right, let's go ahead and let's move on to the Jets, where Le'Veon Bell had a not very good game, but it was great for what he's done this year. 25 carries for 72 yards. Sam Darnold was efficient, 16 for 26, 183 yards, 1 touchdown. I think the key here was the Jets jumped up 10 points, and in the second half, the Steelers couldn't get anything going. And, I mean, when you look at these teams, Anthony, personnel-wise, I mean, the Jets, I think personnel-wise, are better than the Steelers just because they have Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, certainly on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think you're not spending enough time talking about how disappointing Juju Smith-Schuster has been. Dropping passes.
Well, the reason I don't spend that time is, if you remember at the start of the year where we talked about the Steelers, I actually picked them last behind the Bengals, and I thought the Bengals were only going to win 2 or 3 games. I don't talk about it because I never thought he was that good to begin with.
Yeah, I don't think he's a number 1 wide receiver like the Steelers thought. Deontay Johnson, James Washington, I think there are just a bunch of number 2 and 3s on that team. I know the quarterback situation doesn't help. They pulled Duck Hodges. They put Rudolph in. Rudolph gets hurt. Duck Hodges comes back in. I would actually take Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder. I don't know if I would take them over what the Steelers have at receiver, but I don't think it's far away.
How about this, though? The fact that it's not far away, what is far away is the difference between Sam Darnold and Pittsburgh Steelers' 2 quarterbacks. So when you factor that in, you take the Jets receivers just because it was thrown to them.
Oh, absolutely. I think Sam Darnold, if he can stay healthy and he doesn't get hit with mono and all these other fluke things that he's been dealing with, I think Sam Darnold's going to be a really good quarterback in this league.
I think he can too, and that's why I thought the Jets and Bills, at least one of them, would make the playoffs. And I think the Jets, if Darnold plays all season, may be sitting at 8-7 right now.
Are we? What is your assessment of Adam Gase? I know you and I are not big on Adam Gase.
I thought Adam Gase was a good hire there. I don't think he's necessarily a good coach, but we're at an NFL where a lot of these guys are really bad. And I will give Gase this, and we can go back, I said it at the start. When Ryan Tannehill was healthy, Ryan Tannehill took his team to the playoffs. The coach of that team was Adam Gase.
No, he was, and Adam Gase has a bad rap. And me coming from the fantasy football world, Adam Gase is still living off of what he did with Peyton Manning in Denver. I don't know if Adam Gase is ever going to have that big-time offense, but when he's had a healthy starting quarterback with Ryan Tannehill, he had a winning record, and he has a losing record right now with the Jets, but 6 wins with a healthy Sam Darnold.
Yeah, so when we look at it, I think Adam Gase stays in New York. He gets another year. We'll see what happens there. I think Mike Tomlin, to have the Steelers team at 8-7, has done an incredible job. And he'd be one of the 5 guys that I think can coach in this league right now.
Before we move off the Jets, and we're going to have a lot of the offseason to talk about it, the Jets general manager was a late hire this offseason, Joe Douglas. I believe he comes from Philadelphia. I think he's going to do a really good job, and I'm excited to see what the Jets do in the offseason.
Yeah, well, it's the Jets, so I wouldn't be that excited about it. Next up, the Tennessee Titans jumped up to a 14-0 lead, and then Drew Brees decided to go ahead and play the rest of the game. The Saints blew them out 38-28 in a game I don't think was as close as the score indicates. Drew Brees, 27 for 38, 279, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And I'm going to make this claim right now. Any quarterback power rankings, there's nobody playing better than Drew Brees right now, Anthony.
No, and this was a Drew Brees who, coming off the injury, he didn't look like himself. He lost a couple of games, but now when it matters most at the end of the year, he's putting up outstanding numbers. He's winning games, and I think him getting injured was the best thing to happen to him and the Saints because he is older, and I think that time off early is going to help him late because last year it seemed like Drew Brees, he didn't look like himself in December and January, and now he's peaking when it matters.
Well, let's look at it like this then. If this team makes a Super Bowl run or wins the Super Bowl, Teddy Bridgewater should get an extra big ring because we wouldn't be able to say that if Teddy Bridgewater couldn't have filled in and did what he did.
Oh, absolutely.
And the other thing about this is I think the Saints are the best team in the NFL right now because Alvin Kamara is back. He's healthy, and he looked good yesterday. 11 carries, 80 yards. And defensively, it's not that the Saints are great, but the way they get after the quarterback gives them a shot against anybody. And then you've got Michael Thomas, who I think is the best wide receiver in football.
Yeah, and I don't think it's close. Michael Thomas, he broke Marvin Harrison's record for receptions in the season. Jared Cook, I'll keep going back to this, looked like a bust through the first 4 or 5 games of the year, and he's been a monster for the Saints. He has emerged as their number 2 receiver.
Yeah, and when you look at the Titans, Ryan Tannehill, again, played really well. 3 touchdowns, no picks. I would really like to see what would have happened in this game if Derrick Henry was healthy and able to play.
Yeah, the Derrick Henry loss, I think, really took away from the Tennessee Titans. They kept it close, but without that threat of a running game, they know that it's going to be all on Ryan Tannehill's shoulders, and Tannehill's the comeback player of the year. He's been one of the hottest quarterbacks in football, but I think a big part of that has been Derrick Henry's 100-plus yards rushing with a touchdown or 2 a game.
All right, the Colts beat the Panthers 38-6. Do we need to talk about that?
The only thing I have to say is Will Grier, he's not it either.
He threw 3 touchdown passes, or he threw 3 passes to the other team, though. So
he did.
I mean, and Jacoby Brissett, he's not the guy either. 14 for 27, 119 yards.
Well, isn't there a report? Didn't a report yesterday suggest that there is a shot that Andrew Luck returns, or Jim Irsay isn't ruling that out?
Yeah, but Jim Irsay won't rule that out because maybe he can still sell some season tickets on the hope that he's going to play next year, which is pretty much what he did this year, wasn't it?
But, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and maybe Luck just wanted a year off. Maybe he just needed the time because it seemed like all the injuries, always in rehab. Um, Maybe he just, there was a lot of pressure on him this year to go out and make a deep run with all that talent. Maybe he just folded, needed a year off, and he'll be back next year.
All right. Could happen, but I'm not going to hold my breath there. Let's talk about the Bengals-Dolphins, which may have been the best football game played yesterday. It was definitely the most exciting. The Bengals trailed 35-12 midway through the fourth quarter and scored 23 points to tie the game in the fourth quarter. And they recovered an onside kick, threw a touchdown pass, scored another 2-point. They had two-point conversions. And to clarify how ridiculous this is, since 1994, there has been just one game won by a team that trailed by 14 in the last 90 seconds of the game, and that was in 2001 when the Bears came from behind from 21-7 down to beat the Browns in overtime. The Bengals were down 16 points with 29 seconds left. And if you're to presume that every two-point conversion is a 50-50 endeavor, the odds of scoring two touchdowns at two-point conversions are not very good. And the fact that nobody gets onside kicks back, they got an onside kick back. And the other thing that made this special was this improbable comeback was played out in front of literally dozens of fans, Anthony.
Dozens of fans. It was an exciting game. It was the Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game narrative.
Actually, it was an exciting last 5 minutes, Anthony.
I think the biggest takeaway from this game on the Dolphins end is how terrific Devontae Parker has been this year. I believe he scored his 9th touchdown of the year. This was a former first-round pick that looked like a bust and has really turned it on in 2019, and I'm really excited to see what he can be in this league.
Yeah, and on the Bengals end, Andy Dalton, 33 for 56, 396 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's not too bad a day.
What are the Bengals going to do? Are they going to retain Dalton and draft a quarterback? Are they going to move on? It's going to be an interesting offseason for Cincinnati.
It's always an interesting offseason for Cincinnati where nothing good happens. So they almost gave up a shot at the number 1 pick by coming back fighting like hell to win that game yesterday. And Joe Burrow's got to be the guy because Paul Brown should give in to the pressure. But it is Paul Brown, so you really have no idea what's going to happen here. I mean, Andy Dalton is a safe choice to be the starting quarterback. You give him a long-term contract again and you draft Chase Young. Or you draft Joe Burrow, let Andy Dalton leave, or you keep Andy Dalton as the backup and then hope to rebuild everything else. I think the quickest way to be competitive next year is to keep Dalton, draft Young. Probably the best bet to possibly be a Super Bowl contender 3 or 4 years from now is probably to cut bait with Dalton and bring Burrow in. And that's a huge long shot because how many number 1 quarterbacks have worked out in the last decade?
I think Dalton deserves a shot, whether it's staying in Cincinnati or going with another team who can contend and needs a quarterback. But Andy Dalton should not be a backup quarterback in the NFL. I think he's too good.
He's not going to be a backup unless he decides to stay in Cincinnati. I still think the 2 perfect situations for him are Chicago and Pittsburgh.
I think he'd be terrific in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the destination just so we can stick it to Mike Brown.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anywhere he goes, it's not sticking it to Mike Brown. It's sticking it to Bengals fans who have blamed him, and it's stupid. I mean, when you watch what he's done, Kenny Anderson and Boomer Esiason combined, how many times did they take the Bengals to the playoffs? With Kenny Anderson, you had 73, 75, 81, 82. With Boomer, you had 88 and 90. So between these two Bengal legendary quarterbacks, the Bengals made the playoffs 6 times. With Andy Dalton, they made it 5 times. With Carson Palmer, who was a great quarterback, they made it twice. So every other quarterback combined has gotten Bengals to the playoffs 8 times in about 40 years. Andy Dalton's done it 5 in like 9 years. There's something to be said for that, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Something to be said for the Cleveland Browns, too. I hope they keep Freddie Kitchens because that'll be fun to watch as the Baltimore Ravens fell behind early a little bit, battled back, ended up blowing out Cleveland the way we knew that they would. There's not much to talk about in this game. What we thought would happen happened. Would you play Lamar Jackson next week?
I think you need to put him in the game for at least a half because they have that first-round bye. And if you take him out, I mean, he won't see a football field for 3 weeks. I don't know. That doesn't really sit right with me. I mean, you're a coach. You're a head coach. How would you handle it?
With him and the way he plays, I would probably – I don't know. I would probably play him a quarter. But my first instinct is you sit him because what if he takes a shot? And,
right.
Then all of a sudden your season's pretty much dead in the water. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't here. And no matter what he does, I mean, if Lamar Jackson gets hurt in that one quarter next week and can't play during the playoffs, everybody and their brother is going to say, see, we said he shouldn't have played. But if you don't play him at all and you come out and lose that first playoff game and he looks bad, then you're screwed there too. So no matter what he does, it's all results. It's like going for it 4th and 1 on your own 30. If you're Barry Switzer and you come up short, you lose the game, you're an idiot. If you're Bill Belichick and you do it, you lost the game, you're an idiot for a few days and then everybody forgets about it.
Yeah, it's a no-win situation, especially with all the second-guessing in the media.
Yeah. And then we had the Falcons beat the Jaguars 24-12. You got anything to say about that one, Anthony?
Not really.
Yeah, the Redskins, Giants. The Giants beat the Redskins 41-35. Daniel Jones looked great again, so that means next week he'll probably throw 5 picks, but he threw 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. But, it definitely helps being a quarterback when Saquon Barkley averages almost 9 yards a carry and gets 189 yards.
Saquon also caught a touchdown.
Oh, yeah, he had 90 yards receiving, too.
This is the Saquon Barkley the past 2 weeks that we all thought we were going to see all season long.
Yeah, and if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles,
what changed?
I'm worried.
What changed?
He's healthy. He had a high ankle sprain.
Yes, and they yes.
Yeah, and a lot of people think a high ankle sprain is just an ankle sprain, and it's not. It's entirely different.
It's a minimum 4-week injury.
Yeah, it's a minimum 3 to 4 weeks for a normal person. And it takes a while. He played on it a little bit, I think, and it limited him. I think he's healthy now. And if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm printing them playoff tickets, Anthony.
What?
Yeah, because the Giants beat the Eagles and the Cowboys beat the Redskins. Your team's in the playoffs.
Does it even matter? It's like
don't give me this, Anthony. When they lost the 3 games in a row, you're like, I hope they lose to the Rams because I want this over. And then they won, and then you're like, they could make a Super Bowl run.
But that's the issue of being a Cowboys fan.
No, it's kind of the issue of being a moron, Anthony. I'm a Bengals fan. It took about 10 to 15 years for this ineptitude to sink in. You guys need to, just kind of absorb the ineptitude and go with it.
It's terrible. It's Garrett, right?
It's Jones.
How
because
do you
Jones
not
keeps
give
Garrett.
Ezekiel Elliott the ball? I mean, he's coming off the best game of the year. Tony Pollard had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown against the Rams. How do you just abandon the run and have an injured Dak Prescott throw the ball to receivers?
All right, let's do this.
Let's
do this real quick. The Broncos beat the Lions. The Raiders beat the Chargers. And now we will get to the Eagles and the Cowboys because Anthony really wants to talk about this game. Dak Prescott, and we've talked about this before, and this was not a game where they were way behind. and he threw the ball 44 times. Ezekiel Elliott ran the ball 13 times. Last week against the Rams, when it was flipped the other way around, the Cowboys won. Go.
It just doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. They've played a lot of close games where they abandon the run, and then they've been in games where they're down 2 scores and they're running the ball. It's like I don't know if they're trying to fool people. I mean, this is an Eagles team that Ezekiel Elliott has owned. And you just, no pass plays to him. Where are the screen plays? How he's not, it's a head scratcher.
It's a Jerry Jones issue. Jerry Jones is the one who kept him. I think if he would have made a right choice and got rid of him, you wouldn't be sitting in this situation. Now, I think the other thing that has to be brought up here is for about the 3rd week in a row, Carson Wentz drug his team to the finish line. 31 for 40, 319 yards, 1 touchdown, and Dallas Goedert, 9 receptions for 91 yards. Miles Sanders, Greg Ward, Whiteside, of course you had Ertz, Boston Scott. These are the guys that are doing the damage here. I mean, this to me, I don't think the Eagles have much of a chance to win a playoff game. But what they've done to get in position, they're kind of the opposite of the Cowboys. This is a team, when you look at them, you wonder how the hell they're 8-7 and have a shot to make the playoffs. When you look at the Cowboys, you look at the roster, and you wonder how the hell they're 7-8 and don't have 11 wins.
Was Carson Wentz. I was never a big Carson Wentz guy. A lot of it is the injuries. A lot of it is hearing Eagles players speak out against him for not being that leader. But Carson Wentz has changed my mind in the past couple of weeks with 2 healthy receivers, practice squad guys. No Jordan Howard. Miles Sanders and Boston Scott are emerging. Greg Ward is probably their most notable receiver right now. Again, another practice squad guy. And Dallas Goedert and Ertz. Ertz was out of the game for a while with the ribs injury. And Dallas couldn't find a way to win.
Well, how about this? You rip me because I always say Doug Peterson is one of the best coaches in the NFL. But there was a huge difference in the preparation level when you watched that game for those 2 teams yesterday.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would like to make the case, if we go back to the start of the season, you ripped me when I said Carson Wentz was good enough and was going to take the Eagles to win the division. You ripped me. You did. Intangidak is not Intangidak. The 49ers are in the playoffs.
But how do you take away Dak's intangibles?
Because he has none. Because intangibles, he'd have won that game. He had the best players on the field. He threw the ball 44 times and he can't get it done.
And you know this.
What?
Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper they were dropping passes. And Dak overthrew a few.
A few?
But he didn't have a ton of help.
Wait a second, though. Because this is the thing. When you talk about somebody having intangibles, Joe Montana had intangibles. John Elway had intangibles. And the thing about them is they'd figure it out because they had intangibles. And intangibles usually means, the big thing intangibles means to me is you make everybody around you better. And if he has intangibles, those guys aren't dropping those balls. That to me is what intangibles means. He has something special that other quarterbacks don't have. And to me, that means everybody around you steps up their game to where your game is. And I think what we saw was those receivers played at the same level that Dak played, which is not very high. It's a average to a little bit above average. And if you're the Cowboys, you need a head coach, and you need to figure out what to do with Dak because you cannot pay somebody that is overthrowing guys in your biggest game of the year like he's a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah, what I think they're going to do, they're going to end up signing Cooper and placing the franchise tag on Dak.
Yeah. Well, number one, why would you want to sign Cooper? We've went through this with Cooper. I've never liked Cooper. I think he's overrated. I think if he's a front runner. The Dallas Cowboys as a team are front runners. If they jump up big early, they're going to win because they get all cocky. If they're not, they're dead in the water because they have no intangibles as a team. They have no intangibles as a head coach, none at quarterback, none at running back, none at wide receiver, because no matter what you say, Zeke Elliott got the ball 13 times and ran for what, 44 yards? I mean, in a big game, in a big situation, if he's busting off 7 or 8 yard runs a pop, they're going to keep giving him the ball.
But that's the thing. He was, at least in the second half, breaking off chunks. And, it will be third and short. Dak drops back, goes deep. What?
Yeah, well, that's because Doug Peterson basically took it away, and he dared Dak to beat him. And a quarterback with intangibles never has that happen to him because you never dare a quarterback with intangibles to beat you because quarterbacks with intangibles do beat you. And Ezekiel Elliott, if that was Emmitt Smith in a game like that and you gave it to him 13 times, he'd run for 130 yards.
There was also the controversial call in that final drive, benching Cooper and Cobb, running with two tight ends and Tavon Austin on the field.
Yeah.
I know they dropped passes yesterday, but they still give you the best chance to win over Tavon Austin.
Mm-hmm.
That's Jason Garrett. That is do they? It almost feels like Jerry. I don't know. Like, does Jerry really want to win, or is he? It's almost. I don't know.
I think Jerry wants to win if Jerry gets the credit, and I think by staying with Jason Garrett for so long, if he would have eventually won this year and won the Super Bowl, Jerry would have got the credit because he stayed with him when everybody else thought that he shouldn't, and in the end, Jerry was right. The problem you have is, once Jerry fires him, if Jerry brings somebody in, then Jerry's wrong. And Jerry is more worried about being right than he is winning. And he proved that with Jimmy Johnson. He cost himself at least one more Super Bowl ring probably doing that. Maybe more.
It's just, and the fact that they can still somehow win this division, beating Washington, that might not be an easy thing to do.
I could see them and the Eagles both losing next week.
And then what happens? And then Philly gets in?
Yeah, because Philly's won more games. I mean, Philly's above 500
Philly
right now.
As a Cowboys fan, of course, I want my team in the playoffs, but they don't deserve it. Philly deserves it more.
No, Philadelphia does deserve it from the injury aspect and everything they went through this year. They've been put behind the 8 ball. The Cowboys had some injuries here or there, but the Cowboys have not had as many injuries as the 49ers or the Eagles, and those teams continue to outperform them. All right, here's another one. Cardinals-Seahawks. Cardinals beat the Seahawks 27-13, and I made this statement earlier. I don't think the Seahawks are anywhere near a Super Bowl team, and I caught a lot of hell for it, not necessarily from you, but I don't think they have the weapons. I don't think they have the defense, and I don't think they have the offensive line to be a serious Super Bowl contender, and I think the San Francisco 49ers are going to go to Seattle next week and beat them by double digits.
They lost Chris Carson for the rest of the year.
Yeah, they've lost a lot.
They lost Rashad Penny the week or two before that for the rest of the year. Now they're down to C.J. Prosise, who's had injury. I mean, Russell Wilson, good luck. And if anybody can do it, it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, but if you look at this, their leading receivers, Jacob Hollister, Travis Homer, Malik Turner, David Moore, Tyler Lockett, 1 catch for 12 yards. DK Metcalf, nothing. I mean, I think Seattle's going to get beat here. And I think if Philadelphia plays Seattle in the first round of the playoffs, I think Philadelphia could actually win that game.
Would it surprise you if if Philly gets in? I wouldn't put it past them to make a run.
You know why? because Carson Wentz has intangibles.
It's not only what Philly's defense. They were terrible earlier in the year, especially in the secondary. They're healthy now. I'm seeing that there's a chance that Deshaun Jackson can come back.
Dude, they're well coached.
Miles Sanders looks like the real deal.
They're well coached. I mean, they just are. They're prepared. Even when they lose, they don't look unprepared.
No, absolutely not.
And it's what I keep trying to convince you of. And now it sounds like you're convinced. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants beat them next week and they don't make the playoffs. But the Philadelphia Eagles, with the coach and the quarterback, are dangerous. I especially, put it like this, they're dangerous if they're playing the Seattle Seahawks in the first round of the playoffs.
We'll do off-season shows. Well, I just, the Giants, with that offense, they have pieces. That could be, the NFC East was terrible this year, but they could make a big leap if Dallas gets a coach who's competent. If the Giants can get a coach who's competent and get a couple pieces on defense, that Philly will be solid. Dwayne Haskins even looked okay before he got hurt. I have less confidence in Washington, but I think the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Giants, if they do the right things, more so the Cowboys and the Giants, this division can once again.
I don't think so. I don't think the Cowboys are even close to being a Super Bowl contender.
I'm not saying Super Bowl, but at least competitive NFC East.
Well, they're in a competitive NFC East right now. They're only a game out with one game to go.
But you know what I mean.
I'm not really sure, because are they competitive to be a Super Bowl team?
Where they're all not in negative records in December.
Well, they're not, because the Philadelphia Eagles are 8-7.
But they were a couple weeks ago. That whole division was in the negative.
But once again, the Eagles have injury issues. The Eagles are going to be the best team as long as they have Doug Peterson, and the Giants and the Cowboys and the Redskins don't have a real NFL head coach. Because in the end, even if you have more talent, the coaching will beat you. How about this one, Anthony? The Oakland Raiders still have a shot at the playoffs as they beat the Chargers 24-17. And what's scary? Now, it's a long shot to have all these happen. But when you look at what has to happen for Oakland to make the playoffs, it's not inconceivable. They got to beat Denver, and then they get wins by the Ravens, Texans, and Colts. I don't think any of that's inconceivable.
We've seen crazier things happen.
Yeah, because
I just think
they should be able to beat the Broncos, but it's in Denver. But if they get that win, the question is going to be how hard did the Ravens try to beat the Steelers? But my other question is this. RG3 may be good enough to beat the Steelers anyways. The Texans are going to play the Titans. That's where I think they lose out, because I think the Titans are going to beat the Texans, because the Titans have to win to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I can see the Titans. They're one of my sleeper teams. If there's a sleeper team in the AFC that can make a run, you need it now. You need a healthy Derrick Henry. And that's the difference, because if you give Derrick Henry the ball 25 times and he's chipping off 100-something yards, and Ryan Tannehill plays the way he is, A.J. Brown's emerging, the rookie receiver, and they have a decent defense or an upside defense, Tennessee can make a run.
All right, last night, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Chicago Bears 26-3. Mitch Trubisky, 18 for 34, 157 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. David Montgomery, 13 carries for 57 yards. The Chiefs, on the other hand, the defense looked awesome. But was the defense that awesome, or is Mitch Trubisky and that Bears offense just that bad, Anthony?
I don't want to discredit Kansas City's defense. Number one, I talked Trubisky up. He played well for 5 or 6 weeks, and not against the best competition. I think the Kansas City defense is for real. They've been playing well in the past 4 or 5 weeks. They're not winning shootouts. They're not winning blowouts. The Chiefs have been winning closer games this season. And Damian Williams, their top running back, is now healthy. the Chiefs are winning different. They're sustaining drives. Remember me earlier in the year saying you need to sustain more than a 4 to 5 minute drive to win in the playoffs to keep the Tom Brady's off the field, and I think they're doing that.
All right,
I think this Chiefs team is better than last year's Chiefs team, even though they're not scoring 35 points a game.
My only question with the Chiefs is what happens when a big physical team like the Titans tries to run the ball down their throat? Defensively, are they still good? Because what I see with them is a lot of speed on the edge now and a secondary that's playing well. But I still think that there possibly is still a weakness stopping the run against a good quality team that wants to run the ball.
That's the weakness in their defense. Their secondary is extremely underrated. I think the Tyrann Mathieu addition paid dividends. But, yeah, that's going to be the weakness is stopping the run. We saw that when Kansas City traveled to Tennessee and lost.
Yeah, we saw them have trouble with Minnesota and Dalvin Cook. We saw them lose at home to the Packers with Aaron Jones. And that's my question because it seems like, Marlon Mack and the Colts, it seems like the teams that can run the ball between the tackles. I'm not talking about edge rushing or edge running the ball because I think you could stop them there. I think it's teams that want to hunker down and run the ball between the tackles and just batter them that gives them issues. But right now, Anthony, if I had to pick a Super Bowl, I would almost lean towards the Chiefs-Saints Super Bowl.
I would agree if Baltimore didn't have home field advantage. I believe
home field advantage means nothing.
If Baltimore had to go to Kansas City or New England at some point, I would lean the other way. But Baltimore at home is tough to beat.
I don't think so. I really think home field advantage means nothing in 99% of all circumstances. I really do. I think it's overrated. I think usually the record is better from the team that is hosting the game, and they're just a better team. I don't think going to Kansas City is scary. Why would that be scary? We watched them lose, almost all their losses this year have been home games.
So, you said it yourself, that 49ers game in Baltimore, if that was played in San Francisco, it's the other way.
Yeah, that's because of weather, though. I mean, if the weather's going to be bad, yeah, that makes a difference. But if the weather's not bad, I mean, I watched the Baltimore Ravens get hammered by the Cleveland Browns at home.
Yeah.
I mean, and we look at this. Every year everybody says that. Last year, the AFC and NFC championship games, who won, the home team or the road team? The road team.
So you don't believe in home field advantage?
No, I think home field advantage is something that fans that have never played in an actual competitive game and actually know what it's like don't understand. I think this also. I don't think crowds are like they used to be. I don't think they're as loud as they used to be. We've watched Seattle get their ass handed to them repeatedly. Well, no. There's no stadium that's loud anymore. Not like it used to be.
Not Seattle? Not Philly?
No. Well, if it's true, how Seattle lost, hell, hasn't almost every Seattle loss been at home this year?
You want to know, do you think technology is killing that?
Yeah, people do other shit.
When you go to the stadium,
no, I think what kills it is this. It's not just the technology. It's that it's not that important to fans anymore because with sports betting, fantasy football, you may have a favorite team, but you got money riding on this other game. Things aren't as important. It used to be if you were from Cincinnati, you were a Bengals fan. And if it's 1988, you're going to the jungle and you're living and dying with that. It's not like that anywhere anymore. Seattle, they're still loud, but also technology gives you this too. Remember, in 1988, the Bengals were undefeated at home. They were supposed to one of the biggest home field advantages ever. They blew everybody out. The Seattle Seahawks, I remember, in the divisional playoffs, had a hard time even getting their plays called. Now, with technology, as soon as the one play's over, Your coach has just talked to your quarterback and told him to play. You know, there's hand signals that'll snap the ball now. Back then, you know, teams had a hard time with that. I think the game has evolved and technology has made this much easier to deal with. And also, I mean, without that crowd being as loud where you can't even hear yourself, I can tell you this as a coach, I would rather go into an arena where the place is packed and everybody hates me. Because nothing gets the juices flowing like that. Nothing's better than that. I want to go in there like that.
You know, from a fan's aspect, they cater to technology. They put Wi-Fi, you know, at your seat. They want you to, you know, the NFL wants you to be on your phone, on the app, doing fantasy football, putting money back into the game. And it's also with the Red Zone channel. And the fact that you can watch all the games.
Yeah. That's why you see so many empty seats in NFL games, too, now.
The stadium prices. You go to most stadiums, you can't afford to take your family. You can't, you know, so it's...
So basically what you're telling me is this. Real fans, I mean the true hardcore Cowboys fans or Bengals fans or Steelers fans are priced out of even going. So what you're doing is you're putting people with more money, more means to an end into that stadium, and they're there more to take a selfie on Facebook to brag to all their friends that they're at the Cowboys-Eagles game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And that's why I think home field advantage is overblown as hell. I mean, that's all we hear is. The Kansas City Chiefs have lost multiple home playoff games in the last 30 years. They've won very few. But yet, they've got this unbelievable home field advantage. And I can't think of any team right now where I'd be afraid to go to their house and play. The New England Patriots have won multiple AFC championship games on the road. They've also lost one or two at home. You know, I don't think it matters. I think that, once again, I think the fans were kind of taken away from it by the technology that you talked about. And, you know, I just don't think home field advantage is that big a deal. I think it's being overblown big time, Anthony. You there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. I still think it matters, but maybe not as much.
Well,
but I'm not going to say it just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't matter at all anymore.
Well, I would do this. Go back and look at 1980 to 1990 and see what the record of home playoff teams was. And then go look from 2010 to now and see what the record of home playoff teams was. I think that is a good idea for me to write an article about. Because if it's what I think it is, I think it would be very interesting. So, all right, anything else we want to talk about before we go? We got the Packers-Vikings tonight. You got a quick take on that?
It's really a meaningless game at this point.
Well,
but you know,
it's not meaningless because the Packers can still get a 2 seed. Now, I don't think the home field advantage thing matters that much, but I think getting that bye for a week does. Because it's one less game you maybe play.
Green Bay, but for Minnesota, they can't do much for themselves if they win.
Well, they could win the division if the Packers lose to the Lions next week. And you could say, well, they're not going to lose to the Lions, but we've seen them damn near lose to the Redskins. We've seen them lose to some teams they shouldn't have this year. So it's the NFL, you never know. I think this, the fact that the Vikings are missing their top 2 running backs makes this game very difficult for them. But my friend Bobby Sheridan keeps telling me that to take the Vikings and give the points tonight. So I'll just use that as my pick. So you like the Packers?
I'm going to go Green Bay.
Okay. I hate Green Bay. I don't like the Packers. But everybody knows that listens to our show. You want to tell everybody where they can find you, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru, and you can follow the show at the FF Faceoff We can be found on all the top social media and podcast platforms.
All right, and you can find the Grueling Truth at Grueling Truth on Twitter. You can hear us on every place that plays any kind of podcast, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. So, for Anthony Cervino, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.